Hello, everybody. Welcome. I'm James Leichter, president of Aptora. Thank you for being here today. We are going to talk about how to get reports and data out of Total Office Manager and all of the Aptora software. The key to getting the information that you want out of the software is understanding that you can only report on information that somebody enters into the software. There really just isn't any way around it. Software makes data processing easier and more efficient, but software can't give you reports on information that it doesn't have. And I bet that sounds obvious to you, but many people will tell me things like, well, your software is too hard to use. What's hard about it? Well, there's just too many steps to do things. Show me the steps. Oftentimes, that is entering data into text boxes, selecting data from drop-down menus, things like that. Well, that information is what is used to build reports. If you don't need that information, though, then you don't select that information. Like, for example, when you open a work order, really about the only thing you need to do is select a customer, and you could hit save and close. But that wouldn't be a very useful work order. You could create an invoice with a customer selected, and that's it. No address, nothing, just a customer name. Put one item on that invoice and hit save and close. That's all you need to do, but that wouldn't be a very useful invoice. What would be more useful is if you had a work order and you filled in 10 or 12 different fields, if that's what you need, and then you create from that work order an invoice. Now you've got good data. Now we're tying the two together. We've got lots of valuable information that we can create reports on. Let's take a step back though. Let's forget about software for a minute. Let's pretend like we are creating our accounting and bookkeeping system from scratch using plain old pen and paper. The first thing we're going to do is create some forms. And you remember the old days where you were on paper. Maybe some of you are still using paper. You can't really get away with it completely, but let's go back to where we had no software. The first thing we might have done is created an invoice like this one. So there's an invoice that goes back many years. We think about what we want to put on the front of the invoice, what we want to put on the back of the invoice. We need the customer's name, address, city, state, zip, phone number. We might want their cell phone number, maybe a little box that says they said it's okay to text me. We might want to have a checkbox that says residential or commercial, or a checkbox that says this is service, installation, or a service agreement. Why would we want that? Well, maybe we don't. That's really the art of this. We sit down with management, with owners, and we say, what information do you absolutely need to run a successful, thriving business? What do you need? And the person might say, well, I need an income statement, balance sheet, and a statement of cash flows. The income statement, do you need to be able to distinguish between residential work and commercial work? Do you need to distinguish between, say, a service call and an install and maybe service agreement sales? Well, yes, I do, for sure. Okay. Then we're going to add a residential commercial checkbox, a little checkbox for, was it service work? Was it replacement work? Was it planned maintenance? We'll add those checkboxes. And then that way, when we start totaling up all of this information, we'll just look at the checkbox and we will know where in our ledgers, you remember those old ledgers? Maybe you just heard of them, right? Only old people like me remember ledgers, but we'll know right where to put that information in the ledger. We'll put it in the residential column or the commercial column or the service column or whatever. That's departmentalized income statement information, right? But it all depends on what you want. You would tell me if I'm designing your paper bookkeeping and accounting system. I might also say to you, do you need to have the customer sign this record, sign the invoice? Well, yes, so we'll have a signature place. And that's how it works. We build the form based on the information that you need. Non-accounting information might be customer equipment. Do you need to know what the customer's equipment was? Would you like to have the model number, the serial number, maybe the make, manufacturer? Well, yes, that would be good information to have. Okay, well, then I would put that information right in these little boxes, and then we'll try to get the technician to fill it out. Now, I didn't say that part was easy, right? We're just building the form. But I'm going to try to get the office to collect as much of this information as I can because we have more control over that. Getting the technicians to fill it out, well, that's not so easy. But I think we can all agree that unless we write that information down, we can't create a report on it. There just isn't any magic way to do it. And as obvious as that sounds, there's software companies that are talking about how easy their software is to use and how few steps there are. Well, that's because they're taking a lot of shortcuts on data, and you can take those shortcuts too in your software. You just don't have to fill in information unless you need it. So think about the information you need. Only collect the information that you need for your reports. Same way with, say, I have my old safety and efficiency agreement. We're only collecting information we need. We have a sales proposal. We only collect the information we need. We only display information we need. I have my time card right here, the paper time card. So these are all just paper documents that have been put into a software program. That's all the software is. Total Office Manager, anybody's software program, is just making the data collection more efficient. When software came along, it did not eliminate the need to record important data. It just made the process more efficient. One of the best things about software is that you should never have to enter anything twice. You shouldn't have to enter customer information more than once. Once it's entered, you should be able to just pick the customer, and lots of things ought to populate automatically. Once you select a work order number and you create a purchase order, you shouldn't have to rewrite that work order number, that customer or job information. And that's what software does for you. It eliminates the need to re-enter that information, double entry. It also makes calculations a lot faster and more accurate. That way you're not sitting there with your adding machine. Most of us don't even have an adding machine anymore. We have calculators, but we don't have the traditional adding machine because software just eliminated that necessity. So it's important going forward when we start talking about reporting that we all agree on one thing. If you don't record the information, you can't report on it. And software just makes it a lot easier to efficiently record, document that information. Let me give you some examples in Total Office Manager of where we might record information and we might decide not to. Let's say we are creating a work order. I'll open up a work order real quick and I will pick a customer, random customer. There we go. All right, so the customer information populated down here below. I never have to enter that twice, it's in there. If there's something wrong with it, well, then I can efficiently change it. I can double click on this little label down here. That's a shortcut, by the way, some of you might not have known about. Double click on that label. We can correct the information. We can add information such as a department or a marketing type. And then we come back to the work order. We can utilize that information. Anything that we add in the work order will carry forward when we create a purchase order, or we create an estimate, or we create an invoice. As you probably know, when you click this little menu, or you right click on any blank area for that menu, you've got shortcuts to create things. Create an invoice, sale, estimate, purchase order, appointment, equipment, etc., etc. You never enter any of that information twice. You shortcut into those things, and all that information carries along with it. Now, would it be helpful? I'm asking you, you're the boss, right? I work for you and I'm in charge of your bookkeeping, accounting, reporting. Would it be helpful to know if a service call was a callback, where we went out there, we supposedly fixed something, but we had to go back and fix it again, maybe even a third time? Would you like to know that? Well, yes, I have to know that. That's very important. Anyone would tell you that. Well, then we're going to have to record that information. So every time you say yes to needing a piece of information, and I don't blame you, I'd want to know callbacks too, but every time you say yes, that's more steps. more things we have to add to the software. Now the software becomes quote unquote hard to use, too many steps. Be careful what you want, because it's true. Each one of these things represents effort and time. But I do think it's worth it. I think it's well worth it to record that information, such as, is it a callback? And we can just pick the work order that the callback is for down here. We just pick the work order right there, and the software now knows this was a callback. The software knows this is demand service. When you pick the work order type called demand service, it knows it. How does it know that? Because when you set up your work order types, you told it through the what best describes this work order type, you told it this was demand service, or it was a replacement, or whatever it happens to be. That's how it knows. The work order type indicates to the software, to the reports, this is demand service, and it can count those up. Let me just show that to you, just in case you're not aware of it. I'm going to open up the work order types here, and I'll double click on planned maintenance, for example. How does the software count up how many planned maintenance visits you ran? Well, it knows because you used the work order type planned maintenance. Hopefully you did, but you didn't have to call it planned maintenance. The way it really knew is this selector down here, what best describes this work order type. Now you can't add or subtract from this list. You can't edit the list, because that's how it knows what these things are, and it can count them up in various reports. But that's the secret of how it knows. What do you have to do? The only thing you have to do is set these up, tell the software what they are, and the software takes care of it from that point forward. You will notice the what best describes this, whatever it is all throughout the program. It's in lots of different places, and that's one of the tricks on getting really good reports. And one of the reasons why I think our reports are very good is because we're not relying on generic information or generic terms. We're able to tell you things by looking at the what best describes this work order type. So that way we can count up demand service calls, replacements, etc. at the work order level. Remember, you don't have to fill out hardly anything in this work order. The bare minimum to schedule something is only 3, 4, 5 pieces of information, and you could dispatch for demand service with nothing else. But it would be quite handy, I believe, to have good notes about what you're doing out there. It would be handy to know what the work order type was. Obviously, we need to know who the tech was, but it'd be nice to know if it was a callback and what work order it's a callback on. It'd be nice to know what department this work order belongs to. The department selector here doesn't affect your financials, but it would carry over to a purchase order if you created one. It'd carry over to an estimate or an invoice when you create one. So pick it once and forget it. So if you want departmentalized income statements, then you need to pick that department. If you would like to know if this has anything to do with the service agreement that you sold them, maybe you sold them a 3-visit service agreement, and you want the software to be able to report to you how many visits need to be accomplished and how many are left to accomplish, well, then you would pick the service agreement here, and the software would understand that. It'd be able to report that to you. If you want to know about marketing, how effective your marketing is, how many service calls your marketing has generated, how many sales opportunities, how many sales, what were they all worth, who were the salespeople, what's the closure rate. It all starts with picking your marketing, but you don't have to. You don't have to pick marketing. There's no reason why you have to go pick Facebook unless you want to report on it, right? So I know I'm sounding like a repeating record, right? I'm just saying the same thing. You don't have to pick it unless you want to report on it. But that is such a source of frustration for users, and that's one of the main reasons why people say, well, there's too many steps or it's hard to use, because of that concept, I think, not being appreciated or understood. Same way with customer equipment. Do you really need to pick it? Depends on your reporting needs and so forth. So that's a good example of why we pick things, pick pieces of information in the software. And remember, it is really important when you're setting up the software, you're using the software, that you be aware of the what best describes, because that's definitely one of the tricks to getting better data out of the program. One of the most important places is in the chart of accounts where, well, let me just show it to you real quick. I'll go to chart of accounts. Let's just open up an expense. I'll find an expense here. Now you can type in any word you want. The software doesn't really understand what your words mean. It doesn't really speak English, right? Doesn't know what the meaning is. It relies on the what best describes this. Now certainly if you don't pick something here, it'll still show up on your income statement, your balance sheet, whatever reports it belongs to. But when you get into analytics and key performance indicators and things like that, this is the magic of how it understands what you really spend on marketing and advertising, on admin labor, on sales labor, on owner's salary. How would it know that? That's where it knows that. It understands expense on warranty, callbacks, bad debt, vehicles by what you select here. And I think we had a question. Did we have a question that needs to be addressed?
Yeah, Craig is asking, what is the track to location field?
Oh, the question was, what was the location field? Here, I have a feature turned on, a preference activated to be able to add multiple locations for this work order. So that there's a help topic on that if you'd like to read about it. If you're not aware of it, by the way, when you're in the program, you can push F1 and you'll get a help topic on that particular form. And you can always go to aptora.com and go to the support area and search out help topics to answer questions like that. But short answer is it allows you to add multiple work to addresses to the work order. All right, and if you don't see it, by the way, in your program, then it may not be activated or turned on. All right, so what best describes? All over the place, real important. Start at the chart of accounts. Identify your cost of goods sold, identify your expenses, let the software know what it is you're talking about. Like for example, I'll double click on install labor, cost of goods sold. What best describes this? Payroll and labor only. If it were equipment, we'd pick serialized inventory, and that's how the software would know. Just to be clear, your income statements will still be income statements without that information. The income statement doesn't rely on that. What does rely on that is other areas of the program that create key performance indicators like Contractor Compass, where it's analyzing leads coming in and closure rates and how much equipment sales you made, etc. All right. So bottom line, if you don't enter it, you can't report on it. Software doesn't change that, but thank goodness software makes it far more efficient to collect the information and especially do things with it, process it, and you don't have to enter twice. In Total Office Manager, we have a 3 mouse click rule that applies almost every single time when you're working in the program. Whenever you are in something and you need to go somewhere else that's somewhat related, like for example, you want to create a sales lead from a customer, or you're in a sales lead and you want to create an estimate, always know that you should be 3 mouse clicks or less away from being able to do that. One of the tricks is whenever you're in a record, like let me go to the bills list. So here I am, I'm in the bills list. Just right click, just see what happens. You right click on a bill and you'll notice that you can edit, new, delete it, void it. You can adjust the discounts and credits without opening it. You can go to the history of the bill. That way you don't have to open the bill, you can see the history of the bill. What happened to the bill? What have we done with this bill? Have we paid it? Were there any discounts on the bill? You can create a vendor credit right here without opening it. You can look at the general journal information related to the bill, like credits and debits and things like that without opening it. You can also just shortcut right into the vendor's own history. So the bill is for Merriam Containers or Lowe's. Let's do Lowe's. So I right click on Lowe's and I want to get into the vendor so I can look at the history of Lowe's. Well, I don't have to open the vendor, and I certainly don't have to go to the vendor list and find Lowe's. I just right click, go to vendor, go to the vendor's history. And the vendor's history opens, and I can see everything there is to know about that vendor. I can see all the checks we've written, purchase orders we've created. I can see adjusting journal entries, credit card charges. If I want to learn more, I'll just double click on one of those records. So I double click to open a credit card charge. Here I am in the credit card charge. I right click, and I can get into the customer's history. If we had a customer that we bought it for, I could get into their history. I can go to all kinds of different places. 3 mouse clicks or less, that's the rule. So just be aware of that. It's really helpful getting around. A lot of people aren't aware of the report navigator up here at the top. But before I open that, we're all pretty much used to going down the reports menu and finding what we need, such as financials, income statement. And that's typically where most of us go, including me. That's what I use mostly. And you might be aware of this, but typically when you preview a report, let me drag that over to this screen here. When you preview a report, you typically have an opportunity to drill down on any number you're interested in. So here we have labor, we have over/under billing adjustments. What is that? So you look at that number and say to yourself, I don't recognize that. What is that? Just double click on it. And when you double click, you'll get another report. And then you can double click on that to get either another report, or you will go to the original form that created that information. And in this case, it was an adjusting journal entry. Another place, though, you can go is the report navigator. And this may be an easier way for some of you to find what you're looking for, especially if you don't know what you're looking for and you just would like one big long list. You can't filter this list. You can't search in here. You can't sort it, but you can easily see the reports that are available. And every report in here should be in the menu system and vice versa, but you might find it easier to come in here and look around. You might realize that you never knew there was a certain report. One such report that came up recently was the marketing return on investment. Somebody came in here and said to me, is that new? Nope, it's not new. It's been in there, I don't know, forever. As long as I can remember, 15 years, something like that. But it was new to them, and that's cool. So you can highlight that, click options for your regular report options. And then if you want to preview it, double click it or hit preview. And it opens up just like the menu would have. No different. There it is. And that way you can see sales, expenses, your cost percentage, your return on investment for marketing. Now, that's a great report. I'm sure you all agree. Who wouldn't want that? Someone wouldn't want. Everyone wants that, right? But the same person that wants that might have said to me, your software is hard to use. There's too many steps. There's too many things to put into the program. They don't like it. You don't have to put any of this information in, but once you see what you can get with it, you might say, I don't care what they want. I want that information. What's it going to take to get it is the question. Not much, really. It doesn't really take any extra work to get that. Here's what you do. When you decide to do some marketing, you go to the marketing list. Where are you, marketing list? Oh, there it is. All right, you go to the marketing list. Let me resize this so it'll fit on this little screen that I'm using. Whenever you do some marketing, you go to the marketing list. So you decide you're going to put up a billboard, you're going to send out a postcard, you're going to do a home show, something like that. Then put it in here. Let's double click to see that. So here's the home show. And there's where you're going to do it, and you can put in the date, etc. Now, once you have that in there, whenever you spend money on the home show, tell the software about it. How would you do that? Let's go to banking, enter a credit card charge. So here, somebody handed me a credit card charge, and I have to enter it into the software. I pick the credit card, not the gas card. Let's pick that one. And then I go find the vendor. I'm not going to spend much time looking for a vendor. I'm just going to grab anybody here just to make it easy on myself. Find the vendor, and then you put in the expense. And depending on how you created your chart of account, it might look different than this, but I'm going to slide down to my marketing area, and I'll pick direct marketing, and I'll type in the amount. We spent $999. I'll put in a good memo. You got to do all that anyway. I'm sure you'll agree. You have to do that anyway. Here's the only extra step to get a report like that, or one of the few extra steps to get a report like that. Just pick the marketing. So come down here and just select the home show from the list, and I'll just have to type it in. I don't remember where it was. So type, I had a bunch of homes in there, didn't I? So pick the home show from the list, and that's it. That's the only extra work that you have to do, is just pick the marketing type that you've already entered. Now, when you go to take in money, this is when you're spending money. So you're telling the software, I have this marketing thing called a home show. And the software wants to know, well, how much are you spending on the home show? Every time you spend money, you write a check, you enter a credit card charge, you enter a bill, you have the opportunity to pick that marketing type. Whenever you have money coming in, you have the same opportunity. For example, when you go to create the invoice, and you would create the invoice from the work order, or create the invoice from the estimate, or create the invoice from the customer, so that information carries over. You wouldn't want to start from scratch. But if you pick a customer here and you go to build out your invoice, the only thing you have to do, if it didn't do it for you, is pick the marketing. So now we pick the home show. I gotta drag this over. I'm dealing with a small screen here. I wanted to show you the pop-up. So we click marketing and we go find that home show. And now the software understands the money coming in for the home show. So it knows about the marketing type. It knows the money coming in, the money going out, and it can give you the report that you just saw. You also have the opportunity to skip the report. You can go into the marketing type list again. You can find what you're looking for. Say it's Google, for example. So let's just search for Google. And Google call, let's do this one. Double click. All right, there's the marketing type. And you can go into history. And it looks at all that information and reports on it. So here we have a list of every sale. Let me resize that, get the whole thing in there. There we go. All right, so because I put in a marketing type, and because I went the extra step in spending money, I picked the marketing. And I went the extra step when receiving money, I picked the marketing. That's all I've done. That's it. But by doing that, I'm able to show you every sale for the marketing. I'm able to show you how much money we spent, how many sales we created, the cost ratios, etc. I can report on all that information. Also, I can show you how many sales leads were created, how many of those sales leads were closed, were sold, awarded, not awarded. I can show you your closure rate by marketing type, by person. I can show you how much it costs to create a sales opportunity, how much it costs to create an awarded sale, and a lot of other information. The only thing you have to do, there's a catch, right? You got to do something. The only thing you have to do is just pick the marketing when you create the sales opportunity. But had you created the marketing type, that's already done, right? Then you have a customer. If you come from the customer or the work order or the estimate or the purchase order or anything, the marketing would have come with it. So it wasn't really any extra work. The marketing came with it because of how you flowed into entering the sales opportunity. Pick the marketing source. The salesperson is automatically filled in. You can change it if you need to. You get the idea. but now we have marketing data as it relates to sales opportunities. And we have sales opportunity data as it relates to work orders, as it relates to estimates, invoices, everything. It's all tied together. And again, that's the beauty of software. In the old days, we still had to collect the info, but we didn't get to reuse it. We had to copy it from a form to a ledger to a journal, and from the journal, we created reports. I say we because I'm old enough to remember that. I was just getting into this when software was coming out and getting more popular, but there was still manual accounting work going on around me, and I actually witnessed the labor involved in doing that. All right, so hopefully I've made the point that when you enter the data, once you enter it, it's easy to use that data for useful information. You've got all these reports available to you. Again, the Navigator, you can check those out. One report that people really like is the employee efficiency report. But remember, unless you're putting in timesheets, among other things, the employee efficiency report is not going to be very useful. It's relying on many things, including a timesheet, but you had to put in a timesheet anyway. I'm looking down at the floor where I threw my timesheet. It's not within reach. Oh, I can't reach it. But I was going to lift it up and say you entered a timesheet back in the paper days, right? Well, the software wants a timesheet entered too. I mean, it's no less demanding, but if you put in the timesheet, then it gets to use all that information, and you're getting more and more information out of the software that you will find incredibly useful. Remember, the last thing you want to do is open up an empty timesheet and go pick some person's name and fill it out. You want to come from a work order, because then it fills it all out for you. The only thing you have to do is embellish it a little bit, or maybe update something, change a little something, but everything gets picked and selected, and all of it flows through the software without any extra work. Want to know a fast way to close a lot of forms? You notice I have a lot of forms opened right here. Just hit close all right there at the top. And we'll start running through them. Maybe ask if you want to save. No, I don't. And voila, we're back to a blank screen. What if you cannot find the report that you're looking for? So you go through all these reports. We've got about 420, I believe. You can't find what you need, or there's a report in there that just doesn't give you the information you want. A few tips. Keep in mind that when you are in a list, like you're in the sales opportunity list, looking at all the sales leads here, all of the major lists, very few exceptions, have a reports menu button up here, and you can print the list, you can print preview here. So here's a shortcut. Let me see if I can drag that over. There's a shortcut right there to print out that lead. If you want to print the list, you can do that right here. Now, true, that's not real useful. It's just printing what it sees. You can get more columns in here if I go into page setup or change the orientation. It's just seeing whatever you have filtered in this list. So a lot of people don't use that, but you may not be aware of some of the shortcuts in here. You can also right-click and you can open an Excel, or you can export and open an Excel, or just export a delimited file and do things with that. That can be quite useful. All the lists have these same features, so just be aware, in addition to the reports, you can get that information possibly from the list, and that might help you. If you put it into Excel, you might be able to build what you want. Now, before you put it into Excel, be aware, if you didn't know it, that you can always add columns. Come here to the main menu, go down to Form Preferences, Show Columns. A form like this will open, allowing you to select which columns you want. And then once you decide on the columns, you can rearrange them. And then you can export to Excel, print preview, whatever you'd like to do. You might find that handy as well. One thing I'd recommend, by the way, is that you always get rid of columns you don't need. When you open up a list, if there's columns in that list that you don't use, go into Form Preferences and uncheck those boxes, because the software will operate quicker because it has a lot less data to load. each one of those columns can be quite a burden. You're talking to the database, collecting that information, bringing it back, processing it, putting it back in the database, etc. Just get rid of those columns if you don't need them. Pay particular attention to any column in here that has an asterisk next to it. If it has a little asterisk next to it, that's our way of telling you that that column produces a lot of, or requires a lot of work to populate. So by getting rid of those columns, you can make the program a lot faster for everybody, because your network connection can be thought of as like the plumbing in your home or business. Only so much water can be delivered to each tap, each appliance, and the less water each person uses, the higher the water pressure. It's just the same way in software. If you don't need the column, get rid of it. It'll operate quicker. Another thing to think about is, depending on your settings and your preferences, when you're working in this list or other people are working on these records, this list could potentially be refreshing on a regular basis. And each time it refreshes, it's potentially populating columns that you don't need. And you don't want that. It's just going to make it slower on you. There's a fast way to do that, by the way. Go to Preferences and let's see, go to Company right here. So I'm in Preferences, Appearance, Company. Hide columns that significantly show, pardon me, I misspoke. Hide columns that significantly slow list performance. When you click that button, it's the same thing as if you went to everyone's desk, went into every single form, and unchecked every column that has an asterisk next to it. If you did all that, it would take you hours. You can click this button and it all happens instantly. If somebody needs one of those columns and they discover it's missing, they might ask why. They might think there's a bug in the software. You can just let them put it back. But for the most part, people won't put them back because they have more columns than they need, and that will make the program faster. If you need to add columns so that you can export that information, then consider getting rid of that column when you're finished to make it quicker. All right, all of that in mind, you still can't get the information you need from the program. You still have a couple of choices. One thing you can do is take advantage of the custom data viewer. If you click Menu, Reports, go down to Custom Data Views, this form will open. At first, it looks like it's not set up or it's broken or something because it's just blank and bare here. First thing you might want to do is update. See if there's any updates. Even if you update your software, you're not updating this. The updates in this system are separate. So I will click from the main menu, Download, Update Views. And this little form pops up. It'll say update available, no or yes. Now I updated just last night, so there are no updates available. Otherwise, I could click Select Available Updates, Update Selected Views. It'll tell me it's all done, and then I hit Close and they're updated. Now, if you have never downloaded one of these views, I'm going to talk more about what these are in a minute. If you've never downloaded one, then you won't have permission to use it. You have to give yourself, even if it's you that did it, you have to give yourself permission to use it, because the boss never knows if you should be able to look at the sample monthly income by year or the pseudo wages summary. They don't know if you're allowed to see the timesheet details with no social security number and the one with social security. They don't know that. So we want to grant permission for each one. After they're downloaded, then you would just go into security. You're probably used to that, and find that data view, give yourself or others permission to use it. Once you've done that, you'll have a complete list of data views in here. And you never know what you're going to find in here. There's some documentation that we have on this, but the easiest thing to do is to just open these up and have a look at them. A couple of my favorites are, let's see. I'm looking for my favorite. Where did you go? Oh, I passed it. All right. I like the estimates versus actual detail. I also like the estimate over-unders detail, that one right there. Now, when you first click one of those, there may be a delay because it's populating this list here. And you can see that 3,097 records were populated, and I got this list. Well, what's in the list? What's this all about? If you click the columns button, you can see, like we've seen before, the columns that are available, and you will have all of them checked by default. But these are all of the bits of information that are in this list. Revenue to date, percentage of gross profit, original contract price, change orders. What is all this? What am I supposed to do with it? Where did this information come from? Well, we created this. We created what's called a data view or a stored procedure it could have been, but we created this bit of code and we put it inside the database and we gave it a name. And when you call it, and that's the term, when you call it, you're just simply selecting it. You're going to the database and you're calling that bit of code, and it's bringing it back and putting it in this list. Now, what do you do with it? I'm going to get there in a minute, but here is something I want to show you. Let's say that I'm going to open this up here. There we go. All right, so what I did is I just logged in to password. All right. What I did is I logged into the database. Now, you probably will never need to do anything like this, logging into the database, but I logged into the database with a program for that purpose. Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio allows me to connect to a database. So I'm in my database right now, and I can look around. I can look at information within that database. So let's say that what I want to do is look at sales opportunity data. Here's how I would do it. I would do select star from that, and click execute. And so what happened? Well, I populated this list with 1,733 rows, and you can see all the columns right there. Tax amount, probability, status, stage, last modified by, who the salesperson is, etc. And how did I get all that? I typed in this code, which basically said, give me everything from this view by that name. And that view is inside the database. Well, that's exactly the same thing that happened when you opened up this list here. You went and picked estimate over under detail, and it connected to the database and it said, give me that info by name. It grabbed all of it, and rather than putting it in Management Studio like we just saw, it put it in this list. So we're giving you the same ability to go into the database and type in nerdy code that only nerds know about. We're giving you that same ability, but in Total Office Manager. And that's what happened, is it populated the list as if I were in the database, no different. Now, what do you do with that list? Well, you can go to reports and you can do the preview and all that. You can right click and do the export into Excel like we've talked about. But just like you might have done with an invoice or a work order, you can create your own report. You click reports and go to setup. When you do, you might find one in there already. And in this case, you'll find a report in there already called over under. And then I made a copy of it at some point and called it option A. I'll pick that. And then rather than preview it, I'm going to go into edit. And the edit window opens. And then I can see the report as it was designed by Aptora. Aptora designed the report. It's in the software and you can get to it. And there it is. And you can leave it alone if you want to, or you can hit preview, or you can modify it. I'll show you a help topic on this, and we have videos on this, but this is a report that you could have built yourself with that data. It's the same thing that a professional report writer would do. If you hired a programmer to write a report, they would first write a query, and they would call that query like we just did. And that query would populate a list, whether you saw the list or not. So the list could be behind the scenes, meaning it was never presented to you. It was just in memory, in computer memory, and then it was used to populate a report, or it could have been a list where we could have physically looked at it. We could have sorted it, filtered it, changed the list. That'd be the same thing as messing around with report options, like include this year, last year, only this employee, only this range. Same way with that list. Once you're looking at that list, you can modify that list with filters. And then when you create your report, it uses what's in that list with your filters applied. So we very much simplified the process of building reports. Again, come in here, you either modify the report, build it yourself, use what we have, but let me show you what you can do with it. I'll click preview, and I didn't put any filters on this, so it might take a while. Actually, that wasn't bad. 104 pages, that was real quick. And what are we looking at? Well, this may not be something you care about at all, so bear with me. On the left-hand side, we have the job name, and then we have the original contract price of the job. We have the revised contract price, meaning after any change orders. We have the estimated cost, what we thought the job would cost. And I got a lot of zeros here, so I could spend time finding one that has a little better data, and I don't want to spend too much time on that, but okay. So here's one, the estimated cost, $4,815. We have the cost to date. This is how much we've spent so far to do the work. We have the cost to complete it. So we know how much the job is supposed to cost. Let's say that's $10,000. And so far we've spent $5,000 to do the work. We have $5,000 left to finish the work. Then we also know the percents of those things. We know how much was billed to date, how much we've invoiced for the job, how much is left to invoice, how much revenue has been earned to date, and what our billings are over or under where we are in the job. We know what the estimated gross profit is as a dollar amount or a percent. One of the big advantages of a report like this is at any given moment, you will have an idea of how much money's coming in for work you're doing. So we have this much money coming in. That's the good news. We have this much money coming in for work we're doing, but we haven't finished it. The bad news is we have this much money to spend to finish the work. So we've overbilled. We've billed more than we've done. If we had this much money left to invoice for, that's what we're expecting, and we had that much left to spend, that's good. Then we've underbilled and we're in good shape. That's why the report is called over-under billing. That's a really important report. I'm sure you would agree. You could build that yourself. You can modify it, like I said, and make a copy of it. Click report, save as, make a copy so you don't have to start from scratch. Now remember, there's others. If you go to the data views, spend some time looking through here, you can see the various data views that are available. If you don't see a data view that you would like, then you can hire us to write one for you. Other people can write these, by the way. They can get into that database if they have access to it. Not anyone can do that, but they can get into the database. They can write these queries and do things. There's other software programs that can connect to the data set as well, and you can build reports. But easiest thing to do, it's cost effective, is to hire us, and we will build a custom data view for you. We'll give it a name. When you come in here, it'll be right there waiting for you, like employee payroll details, employee withholding, escrow reconciliation, whatever you want to call it. We'll create it, put it in here, and then you can have one of those reports. By the way, since it's year end, I just saw the missing word and thought I'd mention this. Since it's year end, you might find some of these missing whatever it is data views very handy. Like show me transactions that don't have a department selected, or show me missing invoice work orders, or show me missing reimbursable work orders, or missing work order invoiced, etc. So there's a lot of reports in here that are really good for year-end analysis and record keeping. Scroll down to the bottom. We have, I believe, 265 of these. I think is how many we have now. There's a whole lot of them that are in there. So there should be some surprises in there. I think for many of you, you'll like some of that information that you're getting out of those data views. One thing I haven't mentioned is the importance of inventory control. It's really important that you know what inventory you have, what parts and materials you have at any given moment, because if you don't, your reporting is off potentially by the value of those things that you're not aware of. So in other words, if you were to look at, well, let me just do it. Let's go to reports, go to financials, go to the balance sheet. And what's the balance sheet do for us? It tells us how much stuff we have and how much we owe everybody, right? So all the stuff we got, all the stuff we owe, assets and liabilities. Well, one of the biggest assets on here potentially for a company besides accounts receivable, besides maybe equipment, a big number is going to be your inventory. So we have an inventory asset header here. Parts and materials, 268,000. Serialized equipment, 325,000. So they have 600,000 in inventory. Maybe you have far less. My point being is that whatever this number is, if it's not right, then our reports are not correct. If it says we have 600,000 in inventory, but we go count it and it turns out we had 300,000, then our reports are off somewhere by a total of $300,000. Now, I'm being a little bit simplistic, but that's really what it comes down to. If you think you have $100 in inventory, but you have 200 in inventory, where did that $100 go? Well, it may not have come out of your pocket necessarily, but the error will show up in your reports. Which reports? It depends. But in the reports, what time range or what date range? It depends. But that $100 difference will absolutely be reflected in $100 worth of reporting errors. I hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, hit me with a chat and I'll explain it more thoroughly. But the bottom line is, if your report says you've got $100 in inventory, but you have 200, then your reports have $100 in errors. Could be anywhere, could be all over the place, could be in one or two places, but you've got errors, you've got mistakes. And what does that mean? Well, that means then you can't really rely on your job costing reports. You can't rely on your technician efficiency reports. You can't determine if your flat rate pricing is profitable or not. You can't properly calculate gross profit dollars per person day, which you may know is my absolute most important key performance indicator. It's gross profit dollars per person day. You can't figure that stuff out accurately if the reports are wrong. If the inventory is wrong, I meant to say, then that is reflected in many of these important reports. Give you an example, because you may not be aware of it. Go to reports, go to financials. Down at the very bottom, near the bottom anyway, is financial ratios and analysis. This is like a mini Contractor Compass if you use Contractor Compass. When you first come into this form, it shows you the data it's dealing with. That way you can quickly look at it to see if it makes sense. Shows you the data you're dealing with. Then it goes over your profit ratios. Net profit, return on owner's equity, return on assets, break-even sales factor. Your solvency ratios, your current ratio. Well, what is that? That's current assets divided by current liabilities. Well, current assets, what are those? Well, it tells you up here, but that includes things like cash, accounts receivable, but also inventory. So if inventory is wrong, so is the ratio. If inventory is wrong, a lot of these are wrong. If your timesheets are incorrect, a lot of these are incorrect. Efficiency ratios, labor ratios, timesheets are wrong, these are wrong. Z-score, If all that's wrong, any of that's wrong, this is wrong. How wrong? We don't know. It could be immaterial. It may be so close that it's fine. And that's really the truth of accounting, is rarely is everything just perfect, but it is close enough that we get good data. Other times it's just not close enough and we're not getting good data. Bad data is one thing. Bad data and not knowing it is really dangerous. If you're making an important business decision, such as hiring or firing or giving a raise, having bad data and thinking it's good data can be dangerous. Not having any data and knowing it, well, at least you can deal with that. At least you know that you don't have data. But wouldn't you like to be able to have somebody walk into your office and say, I want a $5 an hour raise, and you knew right away if you could afford it or if you were already just losing money on that person? Well, that's what our system can deliver to you, but it does require that the data be entered properly. All right, let's talk about Contractor Compass. Oh, you know what? Before I do that, let me do this real quick. I'm logging into my website. Bring it over here. Okay, so I'm at aptora.com, and I will go to resources, support, search our help pages, and I'll type in custom data view or part of that word and click on that topic. Now, when you do that, when you search for a topic, there's lots of different keywords you could use. I could have typed in build custom reports, custom report builder, custom reporting, or whatever, and you would have probably found it. When you get in here, you're going to see the menu on the left-hand side. This menu on the left-hand side is the entire table of contents for the entire help system. There's a lot of pages. There's about 1,000 pages. The table of contents here on the right-hand side is the table of contents for that particular article. And you'll notice that there's some good information in here, but gosh, not enough. I want to know more. Down at the bottom, we have links to other help topics, and you might go, oh, well, wait a minute. Building custom reports and custom styles. Okay, very detailed. That's the one I want. Click on that one. And now you come into a help topic that's far more thorough. What we try to do is give you important points right away and maybe some good FAQ. But as you notice, I'm scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, and there's a lot of info. But this is the help topic that explains how to build a custom report. And sure, it's not fun having to go in here and read all this and learn about it. Hopefully you don't need every bit of information here. Hopefully it'll give you just the answer you need to fix that group header or fix that page sizing issue or something like that. Tells you how to add an image. Maybe that's what you needed to know. And I go on and on. Something else to remember about our help topics is that you can create a PDF by clicking the little PDF icon. This will pop up. And there's your PDF. Now, if you want to get rid of this annoying image up here, which I do, I don't want that thing, just click on it and it's gone. And then from here, you can click the PDF button. It'll take a minute to figure out what it's dealing with. It'll give you letter or page size options, and then you can click download. And it's downloaded, and there it is. Now you have a nice clean copy on your computer that you can print or use for other things whenever you need it, and you don't have to get back online and try to find it. All right. That's what I wanted to show you. Just wanted you to be aware that that was there, and you can get to that as needed. Another thing, by the way, that you may or may not know, let's say that you are filling out a work order and you want to get online and look for the help topic on the work order. Then what you can do is click menu and look for a help menu option here. And there almost always is one. For whatever reason, we don't have one on here. I don't know why. So there's no help topic? No. just push F1 on your keyboard. So on my keyboard, I have a function key. I got to push it so that F1 works. Otherwise, each key does two things. So I need to make sure it's programmed as function, the little lights turned on, and then I know the F1 is really F1 and not the volume going up. And then I push F1 key, and what it did is it knew what form I was in, and it took me to the same place, but it just took me to the help topic. So there's the help topic on work orders, filling out work orders, etc. All right, if you're a little bit lost, by the way, on preparing for good reporting, then I'm going to give you a couple tips, and there's help topics on this too. Here's where you really want to get started. Review your company's chart of accounts. And if you're not into this, if you're the boss and you're not really into this kind of stuff, then you probably have people that are, or you have an accountant that you can talk to. And if you don't have a good accountant, then you can hire my firm at the risk of being self-serving. I'm a partner at RA Tax and Accounting. We have people all around, we have clients all around the country. You don't have to have an accountant that lives in your neighborhood anymore, not these days. You can hire someone in a completely different state. But, don't put up with a tax preparer that you never hear from until the end of the year when they want to do your tax return. You need an accountant that you can have conversations with like this, like setting up your chart of accounts. That's the place to start. Make sure you have a good chart of accounts. Make sure that it's set up. This is where the accountant comes in. You tell your accountant using non-accounting language what kind of reporting you need. And they help you determine your chart of accounts. And then one thing you can let them know about, if you need help with it, is the what best describes. That way you can come into the software and you can start populating all of these what best describes so the software knows more about the data. There's another thing in the chart of accounts when it comes to your expense account and even soon your COGS account. You can identify the expense as either fixed or variable. Is this expense fixed, meaning it doesn't really change within a certain trading range of sales volume, or is it variable? Does it go up and down in some proportion directly to revenue, sales? Pick that. That way the software, again, knows more about it. And then, as you probably know, you have the ability to print overhead allocated income statements. You can print an income statement down to net profit. One of the ways it does that is it uses your overhead allocation method that you'll see here. Be sure that you've picked direct labor. That's the method you want to pick unless you absolutely know for sure it's the wrong method. If you have any doubts, it is almost always the right method. I mean, like 98% of the time. When you turn the feature on, it automatically populates with the direct labor. But in addition to that, you may need the manual method. The other two you probably won't use. You'll need the manual method when you want to properly allocate rent or marketing to different departments. You might have departments that shouldn't spend any money on marketing, but you have that marketing dollar being automatically allocated to that department unfairly. You can go in and use the manual method, and that way it'll look at the transaction like the credit card charge or the check you wrote to see where to put that money, which department it belongs in. And speaking of departments, that's my second tip for you, getting the software prepared. Go to your department list, company lists, department list, get your departments set up. Now, it's important to remember what a department is and isn't. They really are profit centers. We just didn't call them that, but the proper term is profit centers. In the contracting industry, though, we typically call things departments or divisions, but this shouldn't be mistaken for operational divisions and departments. What it's for is revenue streams. How do you want to identify revenue streams? You might say to me, James, I want to first know, is it residential or commercial? Because we're about 60-40, and I'm staying in both. I need to know the difference. They're priced completely different. All right, fair enough. So we're going to create a commercial division. We're going to create a residential division. And within that, what do you need to know about? Service calls, all right, demand service. What else? Design build, plan maintenance, replacement add-ons, spec, warranty, etc. Those are the departments within each division. So it's a parent-child relationship, and you can go as deep as you need to. When you set these up, the software has no idea what you've done. I mean, just because you have a residential demand service department doesn't mean anything to the software, except it will put that somewhere on a report. But it doesn't know what it means until you tell it. When you're looking at your department, you'll notice an advanced button, click it. What best describes? First thing is pick the industry, then the division, then the department, and now it knows. Now it understands that. What does it do with all that information? Well, again, reports, but some are better than others. If you are not using Contractor Compass, which is our dashboard system that works with Total Office Manager, you really need to use it. It's a great system. It will allow you to open an app, log in just like you log in now with Total Office Manager, but it's a separate app that runs on your desktop. You log in, and then you can launch one of the dashboards built into the system. And those dashboards are just simply Excel spreadsheets. And I'm going to log in, and all right, log in. There we go. Get in there. Okay. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and launch this, and there it is. Let me drag that over. I didn't realize you couldn't see that. All right, drag it over. I'll put it into presentation view. All right, so here's the dashboard. It generated from all the data inside Total Office Manager. It is connected to the database. It refreshes itself automatically. And I can see on this little screen it doesn't quite fit, so I have to move it around a little bit. All right, it's going to be cut off just a little. Okay, there we go. That's not bad. All right, so this is what it'll look like. There is a normal Excel view and a presentation view. If I want to see all the Microsoft Excel stuff, then I can just click a button, and it puts me back into Microsoft Excel normal look, if you will. And then we have the presentation view, which is by default how it opens. All of this information, again, came from the database. It actually came from a series of queries. Lots of those queries that I showed you earlier, it went out and it called those queries and it brought that data over and it presents it like this. None of this information was entered into Excel with these fingers. Your fingers do not have to enter anything into Excel. So don't be put off by the fact that it's in Microsoft Excel. The reason why we used Excel is because it's 100% customizable. I mean, it's Microsoft Excel. So whatever you know how to do in Excel, you can do it in here. All the data is available for you to build your own reports, your own graphs, charts, etc. But this is how it looks out of the box. The first thing you'll notice is the executive briefing, which is 6 sentences telling you what you need to know. If you want to go further, then you just scroll on down. But this page right here is meant for the executives, the owners of the company that want an overview. One of the things that the software is showing you, for example, under cash and liquidity, is EBITDA. So your earnings, well, what is that? Well, hover over here. EBITDA, earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. It's an indicator of the overall profitability of a business. And how does it know? Where did the information come from? It gives you some tips. But here's how it knew. When you went into chart of accounts and you typed in interest and you typed in depreciation and you typed in amortization, any other program wouldn't have known what you were typing in. So even QuickBooks, at this moment, as I understand it, QuickBooks can't report EBITDA. It may be something you can easily figure out if you take out a calculator and a pen and you look at your chart of accounts, and you can make some adjustments on a piece of paper that's been printed out. But our software can report on that because of the what best describes. That's how it knows. It looks at your chart of accounts and it finds within the database where you selected amortization, interest, depreciation, etc. And it was able to take your net profit and add back those things and create an EBITDA. And in many cases, your EBITDA, as you can see here, 86,000, can be way different than your net profit of 99,000 in the whole. So they have a 99,000 loss and an $86,000 EBITDA. Now yours probably won't be so ridiculously different, but they can be that different, and that's why it's really important to look at both of those numbers. But you're only going to see both of those numbers in a program like ours, or maybe NetSuite, something like that. But you won't find that in your average accounting program like QB, and you won't find that in any QB add-on program. So those are cash and liquidity. You have sales summary, key business measurements, some interesting ones here. Sales per employee. Okay, man, no big deal. That's easy. What about gross profit per employee? So we're considering not just billable people, but we're considering everyone in the company gross profit, or gross profit per billable employee. We even have net profit per billable employee. Installation backlog, sales leads in progress, potential value of those sales leads, any OSHA reportable safety incidences, customer complaints. How does it get all that? Remember, it's data entry, but it's not that big a deal because we make it easy. A lot of that stuff is just picked up naturally as you're using the software, but you'll find when you first start using it, there's going to be a lot of zeros. There's going to be a lot of inaccurate information. As you begin to use the program to its full extent, then you'll get more of that information out of it. Come down here to the bottom, past the pretty graphs. Everybody has to have a pretty graph. I don't personally care for them. I'm nerdy. I like data tables, but you got to have them. So when you get past those, then you have a super condensed income statement. Month to date last year. Year to date current, year to date last year. You see a number that concerns you, the red, then you can keep going. Like here we have a departmentalized income statement summary. It's a summary. It shows you summarized all the income, all the direct labor, all the equipment, all of the parts and materials, your gross profit, your allocated overhead. So it's allocated all of your overhead, GAAP compliant, accurate, showing you the net profit for every one of your departments. You're looking for red. You can see red here. Got a big loss. Where's that loss? It's in our residential division. Most of it is demand service. That's a problem. There's the big loss. So even though this company seemed to be profitable, we noticed that EBITDA and net profit didn't line up. We looked further and found out we had a loss month to date, and we had a loss last year, or we had a loss this year. We kept on digging. We found out, well, the net profit in our residential demand service department is deep into the red. We would not have known that with QuickBooks. We wouldn't have had that kind of information available to us. We could look at a month to date, but I already know enough. I want to know, how did it happen? So I can come over to department summaries, and I can begin to see summarized data for the department, sales leads, closure rates, efficiencies, etc. But what I really want is the residential division tab right here. And this is the residential division report separated by departments, beginning with demand service. I can see the actual performance versus the budget. We don't have a budget in here, so there is not applicable listed. But then I can see which numbers are so far off. And it's labor COGS to labor sales percentage. That's off. Well, what's it supposed to be? Well, hover over here, and we can see what it's supposed to be and where we're at. And the other one is gross profit dollars per person day. Again, we can see what that is. We can see where we're at. There are others available, and we can slide down to maintenance, replacement and add-on. These places we're making money, accessories and indoor air quality, new construction, warranty, entire division. Now again, how does it know this is demand service? What best describes? You could have given it any name you wanted. You could have called it frickin' great service, and it would put it in demand service because of the what best describes selection. How does it know it's residential? Even if you gave it a different name, it knew where to put it because of that what best describes. We do the same thing with our commercial division, plumbing if you have it, electrical. How does this work though? How does this happen? It's really quite simple. Let me just expose, I'm going to go back to home here, company dashboard, and let's do normal Excel view so you can see things you're used to. Now we're in Excel as if we were developing the sheet for ourselves. I'm going to scroll from left to right. Normally these would be hidden, and I'll show you where the information is coming from. So when it comes to account balances, financial transactions, how much everything costs, etc., this is where we're drawing that information. This is a lot like a general ledger or journal that some of you might have heard of or be used to in accounting, where you opened up that big book and you looked at all the values of all the accounts. Well, that's similar to this. It has every chart of account in it. It knows the type, it knows the balance, it knows what department it belongs to, what division, what industry, it knows when it started, when it ended, the period, the month, etc. It knows all that and more, potentially. So it has last year, year-to-date values, month-to-date last year, etc. It takes that information and then repackages it into a way that we can understand it. So all that raw data came from the database. It updates itself on intervals of your choice, like every 30 minutes, and then it packages it and presents it here. And that's all the magic behind the scenes that's going on. It does that with a combination of formulas, Lambda, and also Visual Basic for applications, macros. So a lot of that is happening with some simple stuff and some sophisticated stuff. But the bottom line is you're getting this information straight from your database, so you know it's as accurate as your accounting and bookkeeping is, and it's updating itself on a regular basis, and you can add to this, modify this any way you want. The beauty of this thing, again, is rather than you spending a ton of time putting information into a spreadsheet, it just gets in there for you, and you don't have to do it yourself. And it's coming from all those data sheets. Even contact log information's in here, so we can report on that. All right, so that is the company dashboard. It's no different than if it were a dashboard type of report that you open up and you look at it, and you can hit the print button, but it's in Microsoft Excel so that you can do things with it. Again, what would you do with it? I mean, how would you modify this? Well, you'll notice that when you click on something, you'll see the formula. So the cash in the banks is coming from the executive summary data table on B13. And the EBITDA is coming from the financial briefing on C19. And your labor COGS to labor sales is coming from, well, all of that. And you could go to those places to see where it was coming from. Chances are it's a data table, it's being summarized, or it could have been injected into the cell that you're looking at. There are macros that are running on this program. If you click the developer tab and you click macros, then you can see a list of those macros. If you're used to this kind of thing, you know what you're looking at. These are the macros running. To get behind the scenes and look at those, click this button, and this takes you behind the scenes where you can do your own development in Microsoft Excel. Resize this a little bit. Give me a second to make that fit on this smaller screen. All right. There we go. Get rid of the immediate window. Don't need that. So here are all the sheets. These sheets can have code behind them, macro behind them. You can come into these modules, double click, open it up. You're looking at source code. That's what's driving a lot of the data that's coming from the database. Not everybody can modify this, but people who know how to do this will find the code is very professionally written. It's commented thoroughly. There are a lot of comments in here, meaning we're explaining what all of this code does. It's all available to you. This is source code, but it's available to you. You can get in here and look at it and do whatever you want with it. And that's what's controlling the information that's coming out of your database and going into those data sheets. You don't have to know about any of this, though, if you don't want to, because it's populating those data sheets. And from there, you can create your own presentation sheets, such as these. Like here, you're probably used to doing something like this one. Put it back into presentation mode. If I come over to department data summaries, you can see something that a lot of you are familiar with in Excel. It's just a table. And you have your columns across the top, like how many contacts did we add? How many customers did we add? How many invoices have we had? How many diagnostic only calls? How many invoice labor hours? How many timesheet hours? And I want to know all that by department. So along the top is the data point. Along the side here is the department. And if I scroll over to the end, you can see it just goes on. And every one of these is thoroughly explained as to what it is. If you go to the data sheets, then again, you'll notice, I think right away, what these things are, because the terminology will make sense to you. All right, so now that we've noticed where we're losing money, it's residential, it's demand service. That's good to know. But the next question you would have, right, is who? Who done it? What do I mean? Who done it? Which technicians? It's Fred, isn't it? I think Fred's the problem, isn't it? Or Bob. I bet it's Bob. I bet it's Bob and Fred, because I know it's not Ed. He's a rock star. Who knows? But wouldn't it be nice to not guess? I mean, if we're going to point fingers and try to figure out who fumbled the ball, because this isn't football where there's a number in the front, number in the back, number on the helmet, both sides usually on the back, whatever. It's easy because there's $1 billion worth of cameras looking at everybody on the field. Nobody wonders Monday who fumbled the ball, who overthrew who. We all know that. That kind of transparency makes an already difficult job being the head coach and the assistant coach a little bit easier. That transparency makes great data available so that they can review the game footage and point out how the ball got intercepted, how the ball got ripped out of their hands, how somebody was wide open because somebody else wasn't where they were supposed to be. We're not blaming and pointing fingers because the camera did that. The data is already there. So it's not we're not in a position where we're going to be found out and the boss is going to accuse us of something. You're not accusing anybody of anything. You have the data. If you had the data. Do you have the data? Well, you would with this program. The next thing you'd want to do is run your technician scoreboard. We don't call it a dashboard. We call it a scoreboard, thinking like athletics. And again, it's a spreadsheet. And I'll put it in a presentation mode so it looks a little better. So now when you open this, you will see a list of all your technicians and their rank. So David H., rank number 1. How so? His gross profit dollars per person day is 4,757. That's why. What's that again? Well, just hover over there and you can see an explanation of what it is, where it comes from, essential settings in the software. It talks about where in the software you have some very essential settings that need to be addressed if you're not seeing the data that you're expecting to see. So it explains everything to you, what the numbers mean, but also tips on setting up the software. Every column has the same type of explanation in it. Right there, where the columns get their information, how they're calculated, the math used, and so forth. We can choose a different department. We're going to want to come down to residential division, demand service. All right, so George W. up here at the top, he's okay. But as we scroll down, we can see other people and their problems. Now, some of these people may not be part of that department, so their numbers are ridiculously low, but you get the idea. It allows you to pick a division, pick a department, and pick a date range if you need to, and you will see exactly what's going on. You will see gross profit per person day, labor to sales ratio, how many service agreements they sold, sales leads created, the number of invoices, the gross sales, service agreement discounts given, because that's the policy. They shouldn't be penalized for that. Other discounts given that they might have control over, net sales, what were their COGS, labor, cost of goods sold labor, cost of goods sold other, gross profit margin. How many zero amount invoices did they create? How many diagnostic only invoices did they create? How would you know it? The software goes out and looks at all the invoices, looks to see what tech was associated with the invoice, looks to see in the item grid if there is a diagnostic fee, knows it's a diagnostic fee because there's a checkbox on the item that says, I'm a diagnostic fee. So when you created the diagnostic fee, you checked a little box once in your life. You checked the little box that says, I'm a diagnostic fee. Now it knows. It finds that diagnostic fee, then it looks for one more thing. Are there any other items on this sale? If not, it's a diagnostic only. It counts up the callbacks, callback percentage. It looks at how many hours the technician billed, but only if you're putting in timesheets. If you're not happy with putting in timesheets, you think that's a lot of extra trouble, and I'm not being flip with you, then you don't have to do that. But the benefit of doing that is, well, you got to pay your people properly anyway. You'll know how many hours you paid the tech. You'll know how many hours were on the invoice because you have a labor item on there. And when you set it up, there's a box that says, I'm labor. I'm worth 60 minutes. So it knows that automatically without any extra work. It knows how many service agreements this person sold, their percentage, indoor air quality, how many leads they created, and it goes on. Now, if you don't like the ranking method, then we have built-in ranking methods right here. And you can rank them in different ways because maybe you don't like the way I rank. I'm concerned about gross profit dollars per person day mostly. That's what I'm mostly worried about. If that number is not good, if that number is not great, then I dig further. So I want to know more only if that number is not good. But if the person has $800 of gross profit every day that they work, 240 days a year, I really don't need to look any further because the other numbers are probably going to be very good. If the person has low gross profit dollars per person day, then I want to look further because depending on what department we're talking about, I'm certainly going to find things like high callback ratio, lots of diagnostic only calls. And by the way, diagnostic only calls always lead to callbacks. You're out there trying to do them a favor. You go out there, can't figure out what's wrong, you leave. It's diagnostic only. You're back to light the pilot on the water heater. Or you come back a third time because that furnace keeps going off at night, but every time you get there, it's running just fine, and you realize on the third trip it was a bad Molex connector. Those callbacks are predictable by examining diagnostic-only calls, at least in my experience, in my opinion. But this will tell you, you'll know. And if you want to change this, if you want to hide columns, you can do it. Add columns, you can do it. All the math is in here. There's the data sheets that give you all this information, so you can modify it any way you want. Every time you launch this spreadsheet, it populates with new data from your database. Every time you hit the refresh button, it goes out to the database and grabs the latest. So someone out there in the field just now saved an invoice. Someone just got an approval on an estimate. Someone just closed a sales lead. You're getting all the latest data. And it'll refresh itself automatically every 30 minutes so that you can put it on a big TV somewhere and have it displayed for everybody to look at in the lunchroom or the break room or wherever. All right, so there's a help topic on that as well. There's videos on all this. What I want to keep coming back to is proper bookkeeping, proper accounting. Not a lot of extra work. You're really not doing anything extra. But if you use the software to its fullest extent, if you're creating purchase orders, doing item receipts, if you're creating work orders, creating estimates, generating invoices from estimates when appropriate or from work orders, if you're reconciling your bank accounts, if you're just doing all the stuff that you would normally do to have good books, then you'll get all of this information in meaningful reports. If you're not getting meaningful reports, then you might want to talk to us about it. You might want to engage me in coaching, consulting, something like that, or talk to us about training. And we can help you with that. We can get these things straightened out for you, usually pretty quickly. Inventory takes a while, but everything else pretty quickly. When it comes to inventory, if you go to our website, you can invest in the inventory book I wrote here. You can get a PDF or you can buy the hard copy or both. But it's written specifically for the contracting industry. It assumes you have Total Office Manager. You don't have to, but I figure you do or you wouldn't be here. It assumes you have Total Office Manager. It is not a Total Office Manager user manual. It is a how to set up, manage, and control inventory manual, assuming you have Total Office Manager. So it'll make mention of a report or a button or a form, but it doesn't teach you how to use that button or that form. It just assumes that you have it and it tells you what to click, but it goes through the whole process of getting your company ready for inventory control and tracking. And really, when it comes down to inventory management, you'll know you're doing it properly when you look and see that there are 7 contactors in the main warehouse, and you go back there and you have 7 contactors in the warehouse. And you look at Alicia's van, and the software says she's got 4 of those contactors, and you go out there and sure enough, she's got 4. Heck, if she's got 3, you're way ahead of most everybody. That's inventory management. You'll know you're doing it when your counts are pretty close. Not exact, pretty close, because if you can get your counts within 90% of where they are in reality, 95% of where they are in reality, and you should be able to do that, then your reports will be light years ahead of where they would have otherwise been. Hey, I want to mention before I forget, because I almost always do until somebody yells at me from behind the camera, I want to remind you of Aptora University. If you want to learn more about how to use the software to its fullest extent, and there are 3.6 million lines of code, 440 forms, 300 custom data views, and about 500 forms. If you want to learn how to use it to its full extent, a great way to get started with that is to visit us at Aptora University. You come here to the Kansas City area, 3 days of intensive training. We have a really high instructor to student ratio. I'm always at the front of the room instructing, and it's a lot of fun. It's 3 days of tiring training, but when you walk out of there, I think you'll feel much differently about the program. The next session is March 17th. It's March 17, 18, 19. That's a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. It's held at a facility in the parking lot of our building. So there's a hotel nearby. It's an easy drive or even a walk. We'll help you with transportation if you need it. Come to the facility every morning. We train all day, and then maybe go have some drinks. Repeat the process for 3 days. You'll walk out of there a whole different person. All right, I think that pretty well covers it. One last opportunity for questions if anybody has any. Do we have any waiting on us, guys? We're good? Okay. So I'm told there's no questions. If you change your mind, you can always get with us. Reach out to your account manager. The person that sold you the software is your account manager. Reach out to them if you need anything. If you need to speak with me, you can reach out to them and they can set that up. Otherwise, I want to say thank you for being here. I really appreciate you being an Aptora client. I mean, obviously, without our customers, we are nothing. So I really appreciate you being around. And I want to see you get the most out of the software. It can do a lot. And I'm glad you came to this, and I look forward to seeing you in a month. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks again. Goodbye.